I anticipated arriving early at the lawyer's office, envisioning a prompt commencement to our meeting. However, upon our entrance, both my lawyer and I were met with the unexpected presence of Dave and his legal representative, who were already ensconced in the conference room. The sight of Dave seated beside an alluring woman invoked my customary jealous reaction, an emotional response that unfailingly rendered me feeling somewhat inferior to him. Despite being 48, he exuded a more captivating handsomeness than he did at 20, his stature towering and physique muscular, coupled with the accolade of owning a flourishing business and spearheading the local chamber of commerce. Deep down, a twinge of insecurity coursed through me, contemplating the disconcerting notion that failure in today's proceedings might result in the irrevocable loss of the comforting embrace of his arms. Dave barely acknowledged my presence as I trailed behind my lawyer into the room, and a disconcerting pallor washed over my face upon witnessing the red-haired lawyer extending reassurance towards him. In my skewed perception, I interpreted her gesture as an indication of an eagerness to hasten the meeting's conclusion, possibly to pursue a connection with Dave. My past experiences fueled my apprehensions, as I was acutely aware of my husband's adeptness and charm in such situations. Despite Dave's cordial smile in response to her, his demeanor remained stoically neutral when his gaze shifted towards me. Frustrated by Dave's determined reluctance to engage in conversation with me, I found myself reluctantly participating in the meeting, relegated to a seat while my lawyer engaged in a discourse with the red-haired legal representative. As Dave extracted a folder from my capacious purse, unfolding and presenting a meticulously prepared 2-page script, a faint smile played upon his lips, signaling his awareness of my diligent preparation. Subsequently, he arranged a laptop, connected speakers, and positioned a solitary sheet of paper adjacent to it. Nonchalantly placing his hands on the table, he regarded me with a polite yet detached countenance devoid of anger, hate, or grief. Preparation for this meeting had consumed 3 days of my life, during which I committed my script to memory. Leveraging my intimate knowledge of David Brown, I sought to evoke his emotions. Our gathering ostensibly centered around Mrs. Julian Brown's agreement to sign a divorce petition contingent upon Dave's willingness to attentively listen to her for a minimum of 1 hour. Proposing the initiation of the hour, she turned the timer knob, setting in motion its audible ticking that accentuated the silence enveloping the room. I harbored resentment towards Dave for insisting on the presence of lawyers, a decision that precluded the possibility of a more intimate, private exchange. In the initial 45 minutes, my strategy involved the expression of gratitude for Dave's willingness to engage in this discourse. Acknowledging my own errors, I clarified that the dissolution of our marriage was not attributable to his shortcomings but rather to my own self-centeredness. Days of introspection led me to believe that Dave would appreciate my candor, yearning for the forgiveness that my speech aimed to facilitate. Contemplating the hypothetical scenario of our children being present at home, I weighed the prospect of playing the "Dave, you can't break up the family" card, albeit with a confidence tinged with uncertainty. As I sought to gauge the impact of my speech, I meticulously observed Dave's countenance, scrutinizing his face for any discernible reaction. To my surprise, an eerie silence pervaded the room, and as I anxiously awaited a response, Dave's expression remained stoically neutral. He didn't deign to direct his gaze toward me, instead, methodically raising his pen to mark a check next to the first sentence in his notes. The unexpected nature of his reaction left me momentarily confounded, undermining the confidence born from my initial arrogance. In that moment, I realized the oversight of presuming that my argument, crafted over 30 years of intimate acquaintance with Dave, existed in isolation, neglecting the fact that he, too, had spent those 3 decades scrutinizing me. The gifts became increasingly indulgent, and I unabashedly admitted to the allure of the attention and compliments from a man 15 years my junior. My confession took a somber turn as I revealed his proposition for a physical encounter 4 months prior, an advance that I, however, steadfastly declined. A pang of regret permeated my narrative, acknowledging that I should have severed ties when his intentions became overt, yet the allure of his compliments had fostered a reliance on the bolstering effect they had on my ego and confidence. A poignant pause punctuated my revelation, during which I sniffled and wiped my tear-streaked eyes with the finger that had previously come into contact with a piece of onion, a stinging reminder of the emotional tumult. Battling my emotions, I faltered and hesitated, overcome by a profound sense of shame as I admitted my failure to break off the entanglement. The tale continued, recounting an extravagant restaurant rendezvous where a $1,300 bottle of Grange was procured, a lavish gesture despite Jason's aversion to wine. In a moment of vulnerability, I confessed to succumbing to the nerves and consuming the majority of the expensive wine, suspecting it to be a deliberate ploy on his part. The admission hung in the air, accompanied by a poignant refrain. "Oh, honey, I'm so ashamed." At the restaurant's culmination, he extended the offer to escort me home, and in a moment of foolish acquiescence, I agreed. Upon reaching the driveway, fueled by the intoxication of a few glasses of wine, he leaned in for a kiss, an advance I, in my inebriated state, proved powerless to resist. My logic, already fractured by the effects of alcohol, prompted me to think strategically, determining the need to relocate him from the driveway to shield our indiscretion from the prying eyes of neighbors. Consequently, I orchestrated the opening of the garage door, coercing him to park within. As the garage door descended, Jason seized the opportunity for further amorous advances, and, already under the influence of the Grange, I found myself susceptible to his advances. Seizing my key, he guided me inside, leading me to one of the spare bedrooms where, with a heavy heart, I succumbed to actions that would haunt me until my last breath. Profound regret and apologies filled my confessional, as I expressed sorrow to Dave, recounting the degradation I permitted in a moment of vulnerability. Amidst the haze of alcohol-induced stupor, we both drifted into a slumber. The next morning, reality hit with brutal force as you entered the room, illuminating the scene with an unforgiving light. The pain etched across your face became a visceral manifestation of the misuse I had wrought upon our union with one egregious misstep. Tears streaming from one eye, I turned to my husband with a gaze laden with pleading desperation. Despite a lifetime of shared experiences, the neutrality that characterized Dave's expression shattered my illusion of familiarity. His eyes, devoid of any discernible emotion, refused to meet mine. The profound connection I believed I had mastered, reading his emotions like an open book, proved illusory. In that moment, uncertainty gripped me, questioning how my request would be received. The enigmatic veneer he wore defied my expectations, leaving me stranded in a sea of remorse and anxiety. Engrossed in fiddling with the laptop stationed before him, my assumption that Dave was diligently taking notes shattered when he clicked a link on his screen, prompting a voice to emanate from the speakers. It was my voice, captured in an audio clip, defiantly declaring, "GH, don't kiss me, you reek of beer," countered by Jason's retort about my rotten, great breath after one lousy glass of white. The abrupt cessation of the audio clip ushered in a thunderous silence, and the roar in my head drowned out all other sounds. The embarrassment and humiliation I felt when Dave walked in on me with Jason paled in comparison to the revelation that my meticulously crafted script had been exposed as a colossal lie. In that disorienting moment, my eyes darted around the room, registering a slight smile on Dave's lawyer's face and a hint of embarrassment on mine. Dave, unfazed, stared at me expectantly, his expression an inscrutable blank canvas. Bewilderment enveloped me, and I struggled to comprehend the implications of this unexpected twist. The realization struck me belatedly: Dave possessed an audio recording of my clandestine meeting with Jason. The logical unraveling of this revelation gripped my thoughts. Why did Dave have a voice recorder if he hadn't anticipated the need to capture something incriminating? The scope of our recorded conversation loomed ominously in my mind. A palpable silence permeated the room, and I found myself glancing at the cryptic shorthand of my notes before perhaps foolishly diving back into the script I had painstakingly prepared. I clung to my words like a drowning man to debris, vehemently asserting, "It won't happen again. Please believe me." I just wasn't strong enough to resist him. Desperation infused my plea, but the admission that I hadn't been so out of control as to forego protection or allow Jason to take me on our bed unraveled the fabric of my narrative. The room echoed with my declaration that we were in Megan's old room, and Dave, with a mix of sadness and impassivity, shook his head and turned to the computer. A fateful double click resounded, initiating another audio clip, wherein Jason's voice brazenly inquired about having time in bed again, casting a shadow over my oblivious husband's sanctum. Dave, with a final click, terminated the clip, leaving me to grapple with the silent accusation in his gaze. Words eluded me. Every claim I had made crumbled into falsehood, not by Dave's revelation but by the stark truth embedded in my own recorded words, a mere 30 words that dismantled the edifice of my deceit. Standing in the aftermath of my revelation, an uncomfortable silence enveloped the room, leaving me utterly speechless. Desperately seeking any sign from Dave, I turned to him, but his neutral gaze betrayed no emotion. A subtle movement from my lawyer, checking her watch, drew my attention to the ticking timer, a tangible reminder that the precious 60 minutes meant to salvage my marriage were slipping away, and I conceded that my attempts were faltering. Suppressing the panic threatening to overwhelm me, I mustered apologies, attempting to downplay the gravity of the lie, rationalizing that my intent was to spare Dave further hurt. Stumbling through my words, I pondered whether to confess the extent of my involvement with Jason, the realization dawning that Dave possessed recorded conversations that exposed the night of our discovery as neither the first nor the only transgression. The uncertainty of what he knew fueled my hesitation, especially given the suspicious placement of the recorder during my rendezvous with Jason. Confronted with the urgency of rectifying the situation within a limited time frame, I shifted my focus to the notes in front of me. Dismissing the initial points that had crumbled under scrutiny, I honed in on capitalized words, attempting to convey an unwavering love and respect for Dave. The narrative unfolded, stressing that Jason was an additional dimension, coexisting harmoniously without diminishing the depth of my love for Dave. The silence that followed my words prompted Dave to redirect his gaze to his laptop screen, furrowing his brow momentarily, but he eventually relaxed, seemingly engaged in the recorded soundtrack. As the recording played on, I discerned Dave's attempts to locate an icon on the screen, indicating his intention to navigate the video. Grateful for his momentary confusion, I revisited Jason's question about intimacy in our marital bed, cringing at the stark condemnation my words presented. The night Dave stepped out of the shower, inadvertently encountering a telltale drop of white, lingered in my mind as I sank lower into my seat, anticipating the inevitable words that would follow, the initial smugness dissipating in the face of the impending reckoning. Engaging in a subtle ploy to distract Dave, I offered to clean his leg, executing the task with finesse. A diversionary tactic ensued, as I commented on his occasional ignorance, finding solace in discussing how we skillfully evaded detection, a sly remark punctuated with a disparaging tone about Dave's perceived cluelessness. Initially, I had deemed his trust endearing, but now, his ignorance seemed exasperating, prompting contemplation on the possibility of intimacy while he remained oblivious in the same room. Submerged in the ticking tension of silence following the revelation, Dave turned to look at me. Unable to meet his gaze, I shifted my attention to his lawyer, whose contemptuous expression dispelled any illusions of Dave being merely another client. A glance at my lawyer confirmed that even on my own side, disdain lingered. In that moment, I found myself ensnared in a web of judgment, with my confidence evaporating like dew in the midday sun, and my self-esteem swiftly following suit. Revisiting my notes, I adopted an offensive stance, conveying to Dave how, over the last 6 months, he had gradually neglected me, taking my presence for granted. I spoke of his increased business travels, a growing emotional distance, and a seeming indifference to my needs, especially in the aftermath of our children leaving home. My narrative painted a picture of abandonment, a portrayal of a husband who failed to provide reassurance about my age and attractiveness, leaving me feeling adrift. As I paused in my recounting, Dave's attention returned to his screen, and a sense of cringe swept over me as his fingers danced, opening a selected file. It became evident that the words from Jason were recorded just after our second encounter, revealing the depth of the betrayal. Jason's dialogue touched on the lack of intimacy, expressing a desire for more frequent encounters, disclosing a canceled trip, and his role in limiting Dave's diet. The clip was interrupted by an irritated retort from Jason, igniting a renewed sense of shame that compelled me to lower my eyes, avoiding the judgmental gazes of those in the room. Distinguishing Dave's lovemaking from Jason's impatience underscored the profound wrongness of my actions, prompting a rejection of my husband's advances. His persistence waned, a realization striking me with belated clarity that should have screamed for my attention months ago. It coincided with Dave's withdrawal from our intimate life, coinciding with his increased workload and frequent absences, initially interpreted as emotional distancing. Closing my eyes, Enveloped in confusion about who was distancing themselves from whom, a sudden realization dawned. Dave must have known for a prolonged period. The revelation struck like lightning, altering the course of my approach to this meeting. My initial strategy of appeasing a wounded bull was futile if Dave had foreknowledge before confronting me. The ticking clock echoed the urgency of time slipping away, compelling a shift from meticulous planning to desperate improvisation. Rummaging through my 2 pages of notes, I sought a glimmer of hope, the pounding in my head making the process agonizingly slow. The recordings, once deemed crucial, now felt like a red herring in the face of this unforeseen revelation. The game had changed, leaving me grappling with the uncertainty of Dave's mindset during my impending departure. Offended by my betrayal, his primary concern was the motivation behind it. Was I dissatisfied with the quality of our intimacy? Did I find him boring and desire to explore my kinkier side? Did I truly love Jason? Was I contemplating running away with him? As I ventured into the abyss of his expressionless eyes, contemplating the risky proposition of lying again, memories of that fateful night with Jason tantalizingly elusive, the uncertainty looming over whether it was the sole night recorded. The sequence of events became suspect. Install recorders. Resist. Dave's lack of adeptness as an actor cast shadows on the certainty of his knowledge. Desperation fueled my desire to convince him of the truth, that I still loved and respected him. Beyond the fear of losing my comfortable lifestyle, a profound desire existed for him not to abandon me. Yet, how could I justify denigrating him to Jason, calling him goofy in the presence of my lover? The futility of creating a common bond between Jason and me through such actions became apparent. The same applied to professing love for Dave, caught in a web of deceit. Wild horses would not have compelled me to accept such betrayal. The challenge now lay in convincing Dave that beneath the layers of deception, respect and love still thrived, hoping against hope that he would see beyond the shattered illusions. Contemplating the ticking timer, my focus shifted to the crucial task at hand, convincing Dave that despite the tangled mess of deception, love and respect still lingered within me. The respite I had won by delaying the immediate signing of divorce papers felt like borrowed time, the relentless ticking underscoring the urgency of my mission. Summoning my courage, I fixed my gaze on Dave, determined to score points that would gradually carve a path towards reconciliation. I began by acknowledging his perception of a loss in my love and respect, vehemently reassuring him that this was not the case. With unwavering sincerity, I affirmed my enduring love for him and our shared life, expressing a genuine desire to spend the remainder of my days exclusively with him. The gravity of my actions lay bare as I admitted that Jason had been a mere distraction, and my emotions were firmly anchored in the commitment to Dave. I dispelled any notion of running away with Jason, emphasizing that it was never my intention. Reflecting on my transgressions, I openly confessed that I didn't comprehend why I had succumbed to them, especially after convincing myself that I was merely providing Jason with an excess that Dave couldn't handle. Detailing the shortcomings of Jason, lacking the stamina and experience inherent in Dave, I attributed my actions to lust and selfishness. Despite the temporary satisfaction derived from the physical aspect, I stressed its emptiness, devoid of genuine emotion. As I delved into the particulars, elucidating that the perversions with Jason never mirrored those denied to Dave throughout the years, time seemed to elongate, mirroring the pace of impending demise. The disintegration of my marriage unfolded in slow motion, surrounded by those moving at a normal speed. To my left, my lawyer's disdain became palpable, tossing her pen in apparent frustration. It became evident that in this critical moment, I couldn't even secure an ally with monetary persuasion. Dave's lawyer leaned to gain a better view of the laptop screen, unveiling the revelation that Dave wasn't playing sound files, as I had assumed, but rather video clips. The gravity of the situation intensified, and Dave's wife, sensing the profound hurt he harbored, grabbed his hand in a gesture of support. Though he avoided meeting my eyes, a fleeting expression of devastation crossed his face, and a solitary tear traced a path down the cheek closest to me. The question lingered, was he truly suffering, or had he fortified himself by fixating on the screen? Amidst the chaos, a few irrelevant facts registered in my mind. The recording dated at least 3 weeks before the confrontation, implying that Dave had been witnessing my betrayal for a significant duration, enough to discern a troubling pattern. The heat that had once suffused the room now transformed into a palpable sense of dirtiness and sloppiness, leaving us enveloped in a suffocating silence as the speakers continued to play the unfolding narrative of my transgressions. Amidst the overwhelming tastelessness of the situation, my attention fixated on the table where my lawyer laid out the divorce papers, a testament to my helplessness in countering the vile revelations Dave had uncovered. With unparalleled ease, he dismantled my rationalizations, minimizations, and feeble attempts at reconciliation, orchestrating a silent symphony of separation without uttering a single word. It was as if he handed me the noose, blindfolded, and I ascended the scaffold myself, kicking the lever. Dave, acting as the silent conductor, erected the scaffold and departed, leaving me with no chance at redemption. My arguments, based on my closeness knowledge of him over 3 decades, forgotten in the face of his penetrating gaze and the shame and humiliation that became unbearable, prompting me to flee. Escape became my immediate need, running back to the house that was still, at least for a while, my home. It was a temporary refuge until Dave received the eviction notice, part of the agreement crafted in the aftermath of my transgressions. My only salvation lay through a receipt, signifying the loss of most of my life. I took the pen, signed the 2 agreements, and threw it away in a fluid motion. Surprisingly, Dave's business wasn't worth as much as I anticipated, but that's what my lawyer's assessment revealed. Dave of course, had ample time to hide most of it. The ticking silence returned as the last recording mercifully ended. My lawyer handed me a copy of the signed papers, leaving me seated, frozen, torn between the desire to run and the wish to convey a positive message. Longing for an ember of hope, a chance to rekindle the flame someday and convey that I still cared about Dave's well-being, my thoughts were disrupted by the sharp sound of an alarm clock. I stood up, prepared to deliver my positive phrase, when the jackal, holding Dave's hand with both hands, urged him not to seek revenge on Jason. Her plea reflected a fear of never forgiving herself if Jason ended up in prison. Dave's response came in the form of another damning video, this time featuring the voice of another woman, speaking in a shrill tone. She detailed the consequences Jason would face if her brothers got to him first, identifying herself as Mrs. Jason. Initially thinking Jason's silence post-beating reflected fear, I now pondered if being divorced and penniless was a fitting end for the scammer. As I prepared to leave, I couldn't bring myself to look Dave in the face. Whether he wore his expressionless mask, laughed, or cried, it all pained me. It served as a constant reminder of the misuse I had caused this good man. He had lost everything except my house and money, suffering a tremendous emotional blow, all at my hands. Through tears, I managed to squeeze out a feeble goodbye as I shuffled towards the door, my pathetic attempt to salvage my old life discarded akin to a plague beetle. The possibility of my daughter Megan visiting me while I drowned myself in oblivion, or, if she wasn't available, my son Joel, loomed ahead. Just as I began to push the door, voices behind me caught my attention. Another damn recording. An excited young male voice accused, and a familiar female voice, possibly Dave's daughter, intervened, asking, "Are you sure, Dad? I think I'll drink alone." I've been thriving, while she's spiraled into a drunken wreck. It's been over a year since my first post here, and after much introspection and therapy, I've mustered the courage to walk away from my marriage with my 38-year-old wife. This strange mix of emotions is hard to articulate. I feel both optimistic and scared, calm yet anxious, happy yet sad. My fitness tracker shows my heart rate hovering around 80 beats per minute, slightly higher than usual. Writing this serves as a reminder to stand firm. Here's a rundown of why I'm making this decision. She struggles with alcoholism, morphing into a verbally abusive and violent person when intoxicated. There's the painful betrayal of cheating with a subordinate at work, including liaisons during office hours and clandestine hotel rendezvous. Unbeknownst to me, she made plans to meet an ex-boyfriend using her work phone, only revealed by intercepted messages. Despite forgiving her infidelity, I uncovered a booked hotel room during my absence, and after persistent denials, she finally confessed to revisiting the same coworker. She agreed to put a tracker on her phone, but you discovered she left it at her friend's house, who then texted you pretending to be her. She claimed she forgot her phone at Target. Once, she came home drunk in the middle of the day, falsely stating she was at the gym. Despite agreeing to start a new job and cut ties with her affair partner, she hid a second cell phone to continue communicating with him. On a night she claimed she needed time alone, she met her affair partner for dinner and stayed at a hotel. Her best friend, who has a history of financial manipulation and infidelity, has been aiding her in the affair. Fortunately, you have no children, as she aborted your child 5 years ago. It's clear she won't change, despite her promises. Today, she's being served while at work, and you're moving your belongings out. Though you appreciate the support, you're on a tight schedule and may not respond to every message. As for whether she knows about being served, she remains unaware. I told her I was pursuing divorce and wanted her respect, and she agreed, albeit after love bombing me and promising she would make changes. I shut down all her attempts as I did not want to report her to HR, and I would advise against anyone else doing so. If I pursued divorce and she lost her job, I would have been on the hook for alimony. We both make roughly the same annually, so realistically she shouldn't be receiving anything from me. The house is in both of our names, but I do all the upkeep on the property. I intend on staying in the house to facilitate its sale since she does close to nothing with the house. If she chooses to stay legally, I cannot kick her out, so going full no contact while ideal might be tough to do. I am moving my stuff to my father's house today so I can bail and stay there if all fails. Seriously, good for you for making this step. It may seem tough now, but it definitely gets better. I'm 38 as well, and let me tell you, single life at our age is so much fun. I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait to have my own apartment and be on my own. How the heck did you last so long with her, buddy? You should have left long ago. I used to sing that tune all the time. I'd see others in terrible relationships and wonder why they stuck it out, thinking it would never be me. But here I am. It's not easy to walk away after you've built so much with one person. A lot of this really only came about in the last year and a half, really. She had a drinking problem but was always self-aware of her issues and worked hard to overcome everything. She went a long time without touching alcohol. She was sweet, kind, and nurturing for years, and it felt great to spend my time with someone like that. Once the affair started, she seemed to lean into all her negative behavior, and I just kept giving her chance after chance. And now she's used up all of her chances. I understand where you're coming from. If I typed out my list about my ex, you all would think I was insane for staying in it for so long. I think most of it I had become so numb that I just endured it. I don't know now for the first update. Hello, everyone. Once again, thank you so much for the encouragement after my last post detailing the reasons why I finally decided to leave my wife and serve her with divorce papers. It feels good to get over that initial hump, but I know the road ahead is still lengthy and will be filled with many challenges. Ultimately, despite all the rough spots that occurred this past weekend, I'm feeling empowered that I am taking control of my life again. So here is what has transpired since Friday. She comes home from work visibly upset and unstable but trying her best to pretend that nothing happened. She denied ever being served the papers and took note of things of mine that were missing and noted the kitty carrier out. She demanded I put everything back, put the kitty carrier away, that she was going out with a friend, and that I had better be home when she gets home. After she left, I packed up the car and went to my father's house. I did not feel safe with her the way she was acting. The Ring doorbell captured her returning home a little after 10 p.m. Then around 11 p.m., it captured her again in one of the strangest and most unsettling ways I have ever seen my wife behave. She walked out the front door and stood in the driveway for a moment, then began dancing and singing the chorus of The Boy Is Mine by Brandy and Monica. After singing the chorus of the song and a couple more verses, she walked back up the front stoop and tried to tear the Ring doorbell out, but she was unsuccessful and walked back into the house. She was obviously drunk, and I was very satisfied with my decision to leave the house and stay at my father's. I have saved the video and sent it to my attorney on Saturday morning. Her friend picked her up at 5 a.m., as they had plans for a day trip to shop at the outlets. I went home and investigated the house. Luckily, everything seemed all right, and nothing was damaged by her. She came home in the early evening and still pretended that everything was all right and she was never served any papers. I ignored her and stayed to myself on the couch. Eventually, she came and sat down, admitted to receiving the papers, then unleashed a number of different tactics on me to get me to drop the divorce. She threatened, mocked, begged, negotiated, pleaded, love-bombed, and guilted me over the course of 2 to 3 hours discussing everything. I held firm, laid out my case that I was unhappy and wanted out, that I was tired of being mistreated by her, lied to, and emotionally tortured. Surprisingly, she admitted to enjoying treating me the way she has, as every time I stayed with her and endured it evidently showed her how much I loved her. I quickly pointed out the dysfunction in that, which she brushed off as being just the way she is and asserting that she will never sign any divorce papers. Things have calmed down. There's obvious tension in the house still, but we are coexisting and keeping things cordial. My attorney has advised that she has seen this plenty of times in her years of being a divorce attorney, and once all her tactics fail and she realizes that the divorce is not going to stop, she will turn to rage and go on the attack. So, I'm preparing for that next. This is certainly the start of a very long battle, I'm sure, but I keep thinking of the goal at the end of all this, me on my own and self-sufficient in my own place, not being tormented any longer. I absolutely cannot wait for that day. Her response to being served with divorce papers was to go on a shopping trip. Please secure your finances, alter your will, and cancel any standing orders for bills, especially credit cards. You've had your closure conversation, and after that, if you were in any doubt that you are making the right choice, she should have bluntly removed any questions. Time for full gray rock technique. In 180 Surviving Infidelity, Com has a healing library where these techniques are explained. Find out from your lawyer if you have to live together. If you can be apart, then it's much easier mentally, and she can't accuse you of doing bad things if you're not even there. Well, in fairness, the trip was planned prior to her being served. When she came home, she had no bags of anything purchased. When I asked her if she bought anything, she said no and that she needed to save her money. But thank you. I will check out that website. My attorney says I can leave and stay at my father's house if I want to without any consequences. I'm still debating on leaving though. Narcissists will treat those around them terribly, and if those people stay in their lives, it reinforces that the narcissist is so good that no one would ever leave them. By wanting to divorce, she sees that she isn't as special as she thought. Be prepared for her to get very nasty as the divorce progresses. A narcissist will be sure that the divorce is because of you and that you never appreciated her and that the problems in the relationship are your fault. Thank you, this is spot on. At first, I did not realize this. But as time has gone on, I am seeing precisely what you are saying here to be accurate. Now for the last update. It's been a little over 3 weeks now since I served my wife with divorce papers. I greatly appreciate all the advice and kind words. This is a wonderful community that has really helped me and many others navigate through heartbreak. Many have been reaching out to me asking for an update, so I thought I could give the news on events that have transpired and maybe some of my own personal reflections on everything. Thankfully, things have calmed down. I took the advice of everyone here, my therapist, and my attorney, and I left the house. I was hopeful we could coexist and I can stay in my own home, but there was a night where things escalated, and I knew it wouldn't be possible to stay under the same roof as her. I was staying in the guest bedroom at the time. One night, she had said something nasty. I forget what. Later on, she knocked on my door lightly. I answered to find her in tears as she offered an apology for her actions. I thanked her and asked that she leave me be. After closing the door, she unleashed a fury of vulgarities at me on the other side of the door, then went downstairs and continued her tirade. Freaking idiot, I heard over and over, among many heinous insults to me and my family. Luckily, there was no sign of impending violence, but I sat in the room above her as she continued cursing and yelling, hoping she would stop. She eventually did, but that night I slept with the door barricaded and made the decision to leave the next day. Once she left for work the next day, I began packing the rest of my things. Luckily, I work from home, so I had time before work and during my lunch break to pack up my car. After work was done, I jumped in my car with one of the cats and went to my father's, where I have been since. It's peaceful here. The house is not occupied most of the time, and many of the rooms were used more for storage. Cleaning out one of the bedrooms upstairs and buying new furniture has been a fun project. I'm now staying in is quite cozy. For as long as I have been married, I have always wanted a gaming room, and that's what I've been working on turning this room into. I even bought myself a new bed. It's one of those adjustable bases and even has a built-in massage function. I may have gone a little overboard, but I wanted to be comfortable and excited about where I am living. As of typing this up, I can confirm I'm thrilled to be here. I even got my email confirmation for my Steam Deck, so that was a nice added bonus from Valve. It's as if they knew I was going through a tough time and needed something fun. There has been some communication between us, but very little. Since my wife does not clean or really know how to take care of the house, I have been visiting on weekends to check on things and grab any other items I may have left behind. Her tone is definitely changed. She has been begging me to call off the divorce, taking ownership of all things wrong with the marriage, offering to have the open policy I have been asking her for, and swearing that she called everything off with the guy she had an affair with. I'm not buying it. I know this version of my wife, as I have seen it many times. Once the dust settles, she will revert back to her old toxic habits. For now, it's nice to hear directly from the source of my heartache that she is actually claiming responsibility for everything she has done, even if that gesture is just a facade and short-lived. She is a person with many personal issues that I have taken an active role in assisting with. It's rather astonishing to sit back now and reflect on all the things I have helped her with throughout the years. She saw her last Sunday when I stopped at the house. The place is a mess with empty bottles of wine scattered around. After I arrived at the house, she went into the bathroom to throw up quite loudly. She came out and said she was hungover from drinking the night before. I maintained the gray rock method and didn't engage in any way, which only fueled her sorrow further. You don't even care, she said a few times to me while holding back tears, clearly trying to bait me. She is scrambling to suck me back into being a manipulated toy to play with, and it isn't working. It makes me sad to see her like this, but I also lost my motivation to help her, mainly because I realized that there is nothing I can do for her anymore. Coming to terms with that really does feel refreshing. Sometimes I wonder why I stayed for as long as I did, but I'm content with how things have unfolded and with my decisions. I first found out she was cheating on me in April 2021, then found out she cheated again in August that same year. For many, that would have been enough itself, but I still stayed. As my therapist said to me a year ago, I wasn't ready to walk away. I am now. I needed to see this through and confirm that the problem was not me. The problem is entirely her, and there is nothing I can do about it. My options are to endure perpetual heartbreak or leave. I chose to leave. A year ago, I did not realize those were the only cards on the table. I thought I could change myself and make the marriage work. I was wrong. My own family tried to coach me, but I needed to realize it myself without being told. That's the important part of leaving a spouse. It has to be your own decision, not someone else's. This is my decision. I am owning it and I am improving my life little by little. There's a profound reward in learning a vital lesson in life. This hard-earned knowledge is precious to personal development. I endured the hollow charade of her bullshit because I had to learn on my own. I'm not in any way ashamed to admit I stayed throughout all the issues. I'm incredibly proud of myself for finally coming to terms with everything and taking the hard steps to move on with my life. And I'm pursuing all the things I had put off for a long time. I'm making a nice gaming room for myself, exercising a whole heck of a lot. A few years ago, I wrote a book but never pursued being published. I had another book I wanted to write, and I'm pleased to say that I have begun writing it. All these things I had put aside for years that made my marriage a priority. It's so incredibly refreshing to finally indulge in my own interests. I'm moving on, improving myself, and she is drinking herself into misery. I'm focusing on me, and it feels so great. My father's house has a lot of meaning to my family, many memories here. My grandfather came here from Portugal when he was young and purchased the property. He grew up in Portugal, living off the land and growing his own food. If he didn't do that, he didn't eat. So when he came here, he purchased a large piece of land, built a house, built a barn in the backyard, planted crops in an orchard. This house represented hope for a brighter future. He had horses, cows, goats, chickens, the whole deal. As my father and his siblings grew up, the land became less populated by livestock and more representation of family and freedom. My uncles began rock bands and converted the horse stables in the barn to practicing spaces for their music. They played among whatever animals were left at the time. When I was born, my father brought me here on the weekends. He and my mother divorced when I was only a few months old but remained cordial. Weekends meant being free on this land with my dad. It was paradise for a child like me. No rules, lots of land to explore and play on, and an awesome father who made me feel so loved and free. He bought me a dirt bike when I was 8 or 9 years old. I used to ride that bike all over the property, around the barn, and on the front lawn. My grandmother used to complain that I was tearing up the grass. She'd come outside as I drove by the front of the house and yell at me to slow down, but I'd scoff at her and ride faster around the house and through the orchard. There were a few nights here when my father would open the window to his upstairs bedroom and climb out on the roof. He'd coax me out with him, and we'd lay on our backs in the middle of the night, engulfed in darkness, while staring up at the stars together, talking about traveling the universe and whether there is life somewhere out there. Last night, I snuck out through that same window, sat on the roof in my pajamas, looked up at the stars, and cried while pondering life. I cried partly due to sadness, but mostly because I felt that freedom and hope I once had when I was a kid in this house. Back then, I was always so incredibly eager for what would come from life. I looked forward to growing up, being a good person, and living an honest, fulfilling life. Those feelings vanished for a long time, but they are slowly emerging from beneath the rubble of a failed marriage. There's hope for a brighter future, and I can't wait to see what comes next. I still recommend that you contact your lawyer and inform the workplace at the appropriate time. She knows her indecisive and passive nature. The stories and mistreatment will continue after the divorce. You should shake her image. Just read your last 2 posts. Man, you're a candidate for sainthood for lasting that long with her. I'm curious. When you first met and started dating, did you see any red flags? Any hints of narcissistic behavior? I'm divorced and happily living the single life, but if I ever do decide to date again, I want to be aware of every warning sign there is. Thank you very much. There were red flags from the start of us dating. After a month or 2, I realized she had an issue with alcohol. She wasn't plastered drunk 24/7, but she would feel compelled to drink at very random times, and she was always a very obnoxious drunk. She had some aggressive incidents, but once everything was over, she would reflect on everything and admit her faults. She was never shy to admit she had an issue, which prompted me to believe she could change. And she did a few times. There were periods where she would be alcohol-free for a year or 2, then swear that she could handle it again and begin drinking, and eventually, she'd be sneaking alcohol around with her and drinking in the middle of the day again. I forget where I heard this before, but there's a quote that always stood out to me. Love is not solely celebrating the strengths of your partner, but also tolerating their weaknesses. Of course, there's a limit to how much weakness one should truly withstand, but I saw her alcohol issues as something I wanted to help her through. When alcohol wasn't at play, things with her really were beautiful. I believe she wanted to be a good person and overcome her issues. Then she met this guy at work and started sleeping with him. Up until then, she was clean for 2 years and had really put her life together nicely. Once she began cheating, everything changed. She embraced all the destructive impulses she had, like alcohol. I thought she could overcome everything. Maybe she can, but I'm not going to wait around anymore. I'm too exhausted to try anymore. So, as far as warning signs go, well, there's no precise formula I can give you that can be applied to dating. Everyone has their own individual preferences in a partner, and you have to determine for yourself what you can and cannot withstand. I'm not thinking about dating right now, but after all this is over and I feel ready to, I may try dating again. And when and if I do, I think I'll avoid alcoholics. That'll be my own individual preference. Best of luck, my friend. Glad to hear that you are living a happy life now. Update. Would I be the a-hole if I left my fiancé destitute? Original post. I might not be in the right state of mind, but I had to get this off my chest. 2 days ago, I returned from basketball practice a little early, only to overhear my fiancée Jenny telling her friend that she's settling for me. Her friend had recently ended a relationship, and while I'm not sure what they were discussing before, I distinctly heard Jenny say that settling for me would be good for her. She proceeded to describe my job and the perks of being with me, with love apparently not making the list. Hearing this shattered me, and I stood there, feeling utterly dejected. I couldn't shake the feeling that she doesn't truly love me. For context, we reside in a beach house that I purchased as a fixer-upper and renovated myself, alongside several other properties that I rent out. I work in property insurance from home and dabble in house flips on the side. While I take pride in my accomplishments, Jenny seemed to overlook my love for her, the time we've spent together, and my unwavering support for her goals and ambitions. Despite my efforts, it appeared that all she valued was my financial stability. Admittedly, I was in a dark place, and perhaps I still am. I spent the entire night poring over her messages, knowing her password but never having looked before. To my dismay, I discovered that her sentiments about me were a common topic among her friends. Jenny's desire for a nice, normal guy after dating a string of jerks was no secret. She longed for a drama-free life where she could be taken care of, seemingly indifferent to the love and commitment I offered her. Each revelation felt like another jab to my heart. Initially, I was torn between confronting her and seeking retribution. Jenny, the woman I thought was the love of my life, is currently unemployed after quitting her job to pursue real estate. Whether out of genuine interest or relying on her looks, I'm unsure. However, the fact remains that she doesn't contribute financially. She resides in my house, albeit having put her personal touches on it, yet the title remains solely in my name. Even her car, a BMW, is technically mine, as I co-signed for it when she couldn't secure financing independently. We don't have joint accounts, further complicating matters. Praise the heavens, because she did inquire, and I currently cover her expenses. Now, I'm inclined to simply reveal the incriminating texts, toss her belongings into garbage bags, and usher her out onto the street. But, would I be the a-hole if I resorted to such drastic measures? She resides under my roof, jobless, surrounded by friends and family, and frankly, it's time to extricate myself from this dire situation. I'd recommend informing her that you're privy to the disparaging remarks she makes about you to her friends, and that love never once entered her conversations. It's high time to end the relationship and demand her immediate departure. Consider enlisting a friend as a witness while you execute this plan, assisting in packing her belongings and escorting her to the abode of family or friends. Having a witness present prevents baseless accusations and ensures your actions are above reproach during a tumultuous moment when panic and abandonment issues may drive her to make unfounded claims. You're not the a-hole, and I'm deeply sorry you're enduring this ordeal. Fortunately, you unearthed the truth before becoming further enmeshed or tying the knot. Although it's a wretched situation, it might take some time before you can evict her, particularly considering the legalities involved. A BMW, really? She has expensive tastes, doesn't she? Well, here's some advice: don't settle. You're capable of much better, and I sincerely doubt she is. I've been with jerks before, and my response to my wonderful, intelligent, loving partner was to hope that this extraordinary person could reciprocate my love. Oh, and their family's financial status mattered not one iota to me. Not the whole, Opie. Your partner needs a lesson in love, Stability is vital, but a mere meal ticket won't suffice. Ask yourself, if you were to lose everything, would she stand by your side? Would she support you if you decided to pursue further education or switch careers? That's what a genuine partner would do, and it appears she falls short in this regard. Pose this question to her earnestly and gauge her reaction accordingly. One thing I know for sure is that I cherish the memory of my late husband more than anything. He traveled for work, leaving Monday to Friday, and each time he drove away, I felt a pang of sadness. The biggest disagreement we ever had was about the prospect of downsizing to a trailer if it meant waking up to him every morning. Just 9 months after that, he received a devastating diagnosis of terminal cancer. Even if he had been severely disabled for life, I would have gladly stood by his side just to have him in my life. He passed away just 3 months after the diagnosis, and I've missed him every single day since then. After nearly 30 years, the ache in my heart remains, but it's a bittersweet reminder of the incredible blessing I had and continue to have in my life. My advice to all of you is to find someone who loves you deeply. No fancy wedding, car, or house can compare to the warmth of a loving partner who will be there for you at your best and worst. That's the kind of love worth holding on to. I am overwhelmed by the number of responses to my post. Thank you all for your advice and kind words. I plan to have a conversation with Jenny sometime over the weekend. I think she may have sensed that something was amiss because I didn't call her from work as usual, and I've been going to bed early the past few nights, citing exhaustion. I'll do my best to read through all the replies and provide more information. However, I want to clarify a couple of things. Despite how low I'm feeling right now, I don't appreciate people hurling insults at Jenny. It's partly my fault because I didn't provide enough detail earlier. She had a decent job, although she struggled with managing money. Nonetheless, she often bought things for our home or gave me gifts on special occasions. I never saw her as a gold digger. Additionally, I don't believe I misunderstood her intentions. While she may not have meant it in a negative way, the messages were unmistakably clear. She settled for me. I had a conversation with Jenny during which I recounted how I overheard her conversation about settling for me and expressed the emotions it stirred within me. As tears streamed down her face, she remained silent for a moment before finally uttering an apology. She confessed that when we first started dating, it was indeed true that she saw me as someone she could settle for. At the beginning, it was about feeling secure and supported, about being with someone who had their life together and could provide for her. Over time, however, her feelings evolved, and she genuinely fell in love with me. However, this admission did little to assuage my feelings of hurt. I proceeded to confront her about the text messages, and her initial reaction was one of anger, accusing me of violating her privacy and betraying her trust. She couldn't fathom how I dared to invade her personal space. I clarified that I hadn't set out to obtain her password deliberately. Rather, she was simply careless with it, often saving passwords and displaying them openly on her screen. It was only out of curiosity, prompted by the conversation I overheard, that I stumbled upon her messages. Eventually, her anger dissipated into tears, and she tearfully asked me what I expected her to say. She admitted that she couldn't control her feelings, acknowledging that I wasn't the type of person she would typically be attracted to. She confessed that she still found herself drawn to the types of guys she had been with before, but she had settled for me because she believed she was older and wiser now, knowing that I was a better choice for her in the long run. Despite her declaration of love and desire to spend her life with me, I realized that our visions of a relationship, particularly marriage, were fundamentally different. The trust between us had been shattered, and our paths diverged from that point forward. After reaching an agreement, she would temporarily stay with one of her friends while I would relocate her belongings to the spare bedroom. Once she secured a new place, I promised to assist her with the move. Despite the difficult conversation, tears flowed from the moment we began discussing the situation until we retreated to separate rooms. Witnessing her distress was heart-wrenching, and I longed to comfort her, yet I knew that this decision had to be made. As I shut the door to my room, a tidal wave of emotions crashed over me, and I found myself sobbing uncontrollably. The scent of her lingered on the sheets, and part of me either couldn't or didn't want to change them. I am filled with remorse, and I know that it will take me quite some time to recover, but deep down, I believe I made the right choice. Reflecting on the comments from the previous post, I was astonished by the number of women who admitted to settling for their current partners after a string of failed relationships with individuals who were more aligned with their preferences. To me, this notion seems deeply troubling. Settling for someone solely for security, comfort, or financial stability evokes the image of an arranged marriage devoid of genuine love and mutual respect. While some may opt for this arrangement, it holds no appeal for me. Additionally, I received numerous suggestions to obtain a prenuptial agreement, a notion I find unappealing. Preferring a more traditional approach, I hesitate to begin a lifelong commitment with a plan for its potential dissolution. However, I recognize the importance of considering such matters more seriously in the future. Once again, I extend my gratitude to everyone for their support and advice. If there are any further updates, I will be sure to share them. Regarding the car, Jenny cannot afford to maintain it on her own, leaving me with the decision to either continue paying for it or face damage to my credit score. While some suggest transferring the title to her, I must weigh my options carefully moving forward. It seems that the responsibility for the car should fall on her shoulders. He appears to be a genuinely compassionate individual who doesn't wish to leave her without anything, but he must also protect himself from potential issues with the car, such as accidents. Once the car is in her name, she can handle insurance matters or even sell it for a more practical vehicle and keep the extra money. This woman sounds shallow and misguided, and it's her loss for not recognizing the value of their relationship. However, one might wonder why she's in such dire financial straits when she was perfectly capable of working and saving money. It seems she chose not to because she was using him as a crutch. He shouldn't feel guilty about her situation. She's the one who took advantage of him, treating him more like a patron than a partner. Exactly. She's physically capable of working, yet she chose to quit her job because she had someone to rely on. No one forced her to make that decision. I know someone whose mother pressured her into marrying a financially stable man, and they've been in a loveless marriage for over 40 years. It's a tragic reminder not to settle for anything less than genuine love and compatibility. You did the right thing by standing up for yourself, and I'm confident you'll find true happiness eventually. Hang in there, and best of luck. When I was in my early 20s, I knew a girl who had to choose between two guys, one who was still in college and another who already had a job lined up. She opted for the latter, thinking she'd grow to love him. Her family and friends advised her to go for the one with financial stability. However, within 5 years, she was divorced with children. It's a cautionary tale about prioritizing financial security over genuine connection. As for your situation, you're not obligated to reconcile with your ex if you don't want to. You must prioritize your own emotional well-being. My ex, Beck, and I had a relationship spanning nearly 3 years, cohabiting since March of this year. However, in June, Beck terminated our relationship, asserting that she couldn't provide the level of commitment I deserved and believed I deserved someone better. Initially, I might have accepted this explanation had it not been for my subsequent discovery that a mere week later, she was engaged in infidelity with a coworker, who she is now romantically involved with. This revelation came to light through perusal of their text exchanges and confirmation from a mutual friend, Al, whose assistance I greatly appreciate. Al detailed the timeline of their relationship, corroborating my suspicions. Upon overhearing a phone conversation I was having with another friend about the situation, Beck became enraged, vehemently denying her infidelity and objecting to my examination of her messages. Regrettably, this escalated to a physical altercation, which her sister, Kaz, who was also residing with us at the time, partially recorded. Subsequently, law enforcement intervened, resulting in the issuance of a family violence intervention order against my ex. Following a recent court appearance, this was downgraded to a limited order. Recently, Al informed me that Beck expressed a desire to communicate with me to seek closure and clear the air regarding our relationship. While I initially entertained the idea, I harbor reservations for several reasons. Firstly, I believe I've already attained closure, as the exposure of her infidelity and the subsequent altercation served as a form of closure for me. Secondly, I harbor distrust toward Beck, as her actions throughout our relationship cast doubt on her sincerity. Her history of deceit and mistreatment during our time together makes me skeptical of her intentions. Moreover, I harbor doubts about Beck's genuine remorse for her actions. Subsequent to our fallout, I learned from a mutual friend that she has been engaging in slanderous behavior, spreading falsehoods and maligning my character behind my back. These actions are incongruent with genuine remorse, reinforcing my skepticism. Given these factors, I am hesitant to engage with Beck and am reluctant to believe her motives are purely altruistic. While I appreciate the gesture, I am wary of opening old wounds and potentially subjecting myself to further emotional distress. Since the breakup and the subsequent incidents, I've made significant strides in my mental and physical well-being, and I fear that reconnecting with Beck would jeopardize the progress I've made in rebuilding myself. It's only been a month and a half since Beck and I parted ways, which feels too soon for me to consider reconciling with her, especially given the events that followed our breakup. While I'm open to outside perspectives, I'm inclined to believe that engaging with Beck again would offer me no tangible benefits. Moreover, I've already taken measures to distance myself from Beck by blocking her on all social media platforms immediately after the altercation. The information I have about her is solely from mutual friends who also know her, as we no longer share the same social circles. Additionally, the limited order issued by the court stipulates that she is prohibited from mistreating me or damaging my property, which should be a given, but it provides a legal safeguard nonetheless. It's worth noting that the person she cheated on me with was also a friend of mine. Despite my suspicions, I had trusted them both, only to discover the truth later on. As for the humorous suggestion about making her drive an hour only to ghost her, while it brought a chuckle, it doesn't align with my principles or desired course of action. Ultimately, I remain steadfast in my decision not to entertain Beck's offer of reconciliation, as I believe it's in my best interest to focus on my own healing and well-being. Given the wealth of information I've gathered from her actions, I believe I have enough material to sustain me for a while. While I don't perceive myself as vindictive or heartless, I do admit to possessing a streak of pettiness, and I'm inclined to let karma take its course rather than take any direct action against her. Engaging in conversation with her would likely yield no positive outcomes. Instead, it could result in accusations, emotional manipulation, or further harm to my well-being. It's evident that she seeks to absolve herself or perhaps inflict additional emotional or physical pain upon me, making it clear that a meeting with her would serve no constructive purpose. Opie has already expressed that he's achieved closure, and he owes her no further time or attention. The most effective form of petty revenge may indeed be to ignore her completely, blocking her from his life and reaffirming her irrelevance in his present circumstances. Any attempt at reconciliation from her end is likely a ploy to manipulate his emotions or draw him back into a cycle of abuse. It's within Opie's rights to prioritize his healing and well-being, and he should not feel obligated to subject himself to further abuse. Any attempt at contact from her end should be reported to the authorities, as it may constitute a violation of the court order. Documenting such instances can aid in obtaining a restraining order if necessary. Ultimately, Opie should focus on moving forward with his life, as he has already found closure and has no need to engage with her, especially if it risks his mental and emotional health.